Good morning, students. You are welcome to New Catholic Mission School, Java. So, I am sure you are happy and enjoying your life, and same time I am sure you are studying also, and your parents are making you to study. So, good. Now we are going to start the second chapter of the history, students. So, the second chapter is the new kings and the kingdom. New kings and the kingdom. This came into the 7th century, children. This dynasty came to the new century in 7th century. That was the which dynasty was the Gujara Pratihara and Rashtrakuta and Palas. These three dynasty was in the beginning. What do you mean by the dynasty, children? You may be thinking, what it is the ma'am may saying. What is a dynasty? Dynasty means heritage. And now for an example, Maurya dynasty. Maurya dynasty was the first was his son was who was ruling the Chandragupta. Then after the Chandragupta, his son was ruling that Bindusarai, and after Bindusarai, his son was ruling the Ashoka. So this continuously comes to from the family to family, heritage to heritage. So this is called dynasty. The three dynasty came into the this 7th century. That was Gujara Pratihara, Palas, and the Rakshikutra. These three dynasty always used to fight for the Kanauj. This Kanauj is the three was very close to the, and this Kanauj was a very important place for this dynasty, because this Kanauj has a lot of wealth. So this Gujara Pratihara and Rakshikutra and Palas always used to think this dynasty, they should adopt this Kanauj into them. The embrace of the new dynasties. By the 7th century, there was a big landlords, warriors, chiefs in the different region of the subcontinent. Kings often acknowledge them as their subordinated or samant. So, children, in 7th century, there was a lot of big lord, landlords and warrior. They were fighting also, and they had a lot of lands. So these people acknowledge, who acknowledge? The king acknowledge that these people have a lot of authorities, they have a lot of money, and they can achieve. So they started taking the donated them the samantas, and they subordinated these people who they call the samanta. This samanta they were expected to bring gifts for the kings, and this samanta were expected the gifts should be given to the kings and overlords. Be patient, be present at the courts and provide them the military support. And these people were helping to provide the military support to whom? To the kings. So as the Samanta gained power, and slowly the Samanta gained the power from the kings, because the king knows that this Samanta has a land and this wealth power. So they declare, and after the Samanta they gained lot of power and wealth. From where? From the kings. And from the kings they took, and then they themselves declare as a Maha Samanta and a Maha Mandleshwara. Then they themselves, who the Samanta declared themselves that they were the Maha Samanta and Maha Mandleshwara, the great lord of a circle. So this Rakshikutra was such a incidents that were Rakshikutra. Now you see the Rakshikutra. He was in the Deccan, and he was in the Deccan in the subordinate of the Chalukya. Chalukya के अंडर में था, in under of the Chalukya. So this Rakshikutra was under the Chalukya of the Karnataka. In the mid 8th century, Danti Durga, a Rakshikutra chief, overthrew his Chanakya overland and performed the ritual called Hirni So this Rakshakutra, he overwhelmed whom? Chalukya. He overwhelmed the Chanukya and performed the ritual. What ritual was performed? The Harini Garbha means the golden womb. Golden womb. When this ritual was performed with the help of Brahmins, it was thought to lead the rebirth of the sacrifice Kshatriya even if he was not one by birth. This Kshatriya was not by birth, they were not the king or a fighting, but by birth they were Brahman, but they performed these and they sacrificed, they offered the sacrifice, but Rakshakutra, then they came to fight and take another dynasty. In other case, men of interrupting families use the military skill to carve out the kingdoms, for instance of Kadamba, Mayurim and the Gujarat Pratihara, Hari Chandra were the Brahman. These people were the Brahman who, this Gujarat Pratihara, Harichandra and Mayura, Kadamba Mayura, these people were the Brahman, but who gave up their tradition. They gave up their tradition and they became establishing and successful kingdom in Karnataka and Rajasthan. Though they were the Brahman, but they stopped their practicing the performance of the ritual practicing, and they stopped and they become the kingdom, establishing the kingdom in Karnataka and Rajasthan. Then administration in the kingdoms. Now many of these new kings adopted high sounding such as a Maharaja Dhiraj means great king over lord of kings, and Tribhushana Chankara, lord of the three worlds. These three worlds, they themselves adopted as they thought that themselves, they Maharaja Adhiraj means the great king over land and the lord of three worlds. These they used to think this who Pratihara and Rakshakutra and Harichandra, and they were shared power to Samathas as well as associated the Pijan traders and Brahmins. They shared their power with the Samanta, who these people, who was administrating the kingdom, they shared their power with the Samanta as well as the Pijan traders and Brahmins. The Pijans, traders and Brahmins, so that they get the resource from them, from whom these people get resource from the Pijans, traders and Brahmins, and these they produce that the Pijan cattle keepers attained attritions who were often perform the complete surrender, part of which they produced. Sometimes these were the claimed as a rent, and these people, the artisans and the Pijans and the Pijans cattle keepers, these were producing the things of money and producing the resource, and so this resource was taken from them as a rent of by the king, and this revenue was also called the trader. This revenue also called from the trader, collected from the trader also, not only from this pigeon cattle and artisans, but this revenue also was taken from the. Now these taxes was also known as a viti. These taxes also known as a viti. This rent and viti, this was called as a viti also. These resources were used to finance the king's establishment. These resources were used to inflame the king's establishment. These resources, what was the resources? The tax, viti and the tax and the rent. These things was taken to establish the kingdom, as well as the construct the temple and the forts. These kingdoms, the kings used to construct the temple and as well as a fort, and to fight also they used to take this same resource from they were taken from the people of the cattle, artisans, and these people they have taken taxes, veti and rent. So these were the resource of the kings. They were then there was this personal these were true about the army as well as in these many cases these things rent, veti, and these things were rent and veti and taxes was collected by the king's relatives, more closer relatives of the king held in their position. Now, Prashitis, this Pratishit land government, Pratishit contain details about that may not be literally true, but they tells us how rulers wanted to depict themselves, and they in this Prashiti means the Brahman used to write about the kingdom. They used to write everything in favor of the kingdom. They never used to write against, and they never criticized the kingdom, but they always helped the administration about the helping them to write but not criticizing them. The achievement of the Naga, and another Prashitis. One Prashitis was written in Sanskrit and found in Gwalior. This Prashitis was written in Sanskrit. Most of the time these things was written in the Sanskrit because those days only Brahman only can read the Sanskrit properly. So this Sanskrit was, and this was Prashitis was found in Gwalior, Madhya Pradesh, etc. And then kings often rewarded Brahman by grants of land, and these kings in favor, they used to do the favor of the kings, these Brahmans. So the kings used to reward the Brahmans the lot of land. The lot of land they used to reward to whom? To the Brahman, and this recorded on the copper plate, and this was written on this copper plate, children, on the copper plate which were given to those who received the land. And all those Brahmans who have taken got the land record, and this record was kept on the plate of the copper, and this was written Sanskrit and partly in Tamil, and this was held in one ring, holding in the one ring the plates together, secured with the royal seal. With the royal seal this was secured. Now, usually for 20th century was a long Sanskrit poet containing the history of the king who ruled over the Kashmir. Now, there was in 7th century, but in 12th century there was again there was a king in the Kashmir, and he also ruled over Kashmir, and it was composed by the author. That was also written in Sanskrit, and he composed, that was a Kalahana. He used a variety of sources including inscription, documents, eyewitness accounts and earlier history. These things he make use of to find out what was the real thing. And the Kalanga, he used variety of sources including the inscription, documents, eyewitness, were mostly the eyewitness account in earlier history to write his account. In his account he used to write, and he wrote Prashitis. He not even published a king's good way, but he criticized the policy of the ruler of the kings. He did not even write only the favor of the kings, but he also criticized the king also, who criticized the Kalana who were in Kashmir. Now warfare of wealth. Now children, by this word only you may understand warfare for wealth. Warfare for wealth means war was for the wealth. So at the same time they tried to control the areas. One particularly Price's area was the city Kanauj in the Ganga valley. Now children, again I will go back to you in the same place in the map. I will take you to the map. Okay, these three things, three kingdom. These three kingdom, which were the three kingdom? Rakshakutra, Gujarat Pratihara and Palasa. These three people, these three kingdom were always fighting for the war, for what they were fighting? They were fighting for the wealth. They were fighting for the wealth because in Kanauj there was a lot of wealth was there. So these three kings, three dynasty always used to fight for the Kanauj, and Kanauj was in the valley of Ganga, and for these centuries rulers belonged to the Gujarat Pratihara, Rakshakutra and Pala, a dynasty who fought for control over the Kanauj because there was a three parties. These three parties were there. Which were the three party? Gujarat Pratihara, Rakshakutra and Pala. These three dynasty was the three parties in these long drive conflicts. Historians were also often describe its triple struggle. This triple struggle means what? These three things, these three dynasty was always used to fight. So this was described in the history as a tripartite struggle. Okay, have you understood this much, children? As well as see in the ruler resource. Now you see the power and resources built by building large temple. So when they attacked one another's kingdom and they built the temples and buildings, big buildings and the temple, and so they attacked one another. They attacked one another for what they used to attack? Another kingdom to attack, target the temples and was something extremely rich. Then they used to target the temple to get the wealth from the temple. One of the best such as the rulers of is Sultan Muhammad Ghazni. Now there is a big ruler, best known of the rulers of Sultan in Delhi. That was Sultan time. Muhammad Ghazni was in Afghanistan. He was in Afghanistan. He ruled this from the 997 to 10 to 30 and extended control of the parts of Central Asia, Iran and the northwestern part of the subcontinent. He resided the subcontinent almost every year. He included his subcontinent every year. Who? The Muhammad Ghaznavi. And he attacked where? In Gujarat. In Gujarat there is a Somnath Mandir. I am sure all of you know the Somnath Mandir. That Somnath Mandir was built mostly with the gold. So this Ghazni's eyes were so powerful. He used to see where he can get the more wealth. So he attacked the Somnath Mandir in Gujarat. Sultan Muhammad was also interested in finding out more about the people he conquered. He also used to find out about the people. Who used to find out? Sultan Muhammad. And there was a scholar who interested the scholar named Al-Burin to write an account of the subcontinent. Whatever good subcontinent was there, this scholar named Al-Burani, he used to find out and write everything in detail and give to the king. And that was the King Sultan Muhammad Ghor. And this Arabic word known as a caliph, as a remark of important source of historians, and this was the Arabic word of the non and a Katab and Al-Hid, and this remained remains as an important source for the historian. This was remain as an important source of a historian. He consulted Sanskrit scholars to prepare the account. He also asked the Sanskrit consult to prepare the account of him, who Muhammad Gajdevi. One another king who emerged the welfare include the China, that was the Chauhans, who ruled over the region around the Delhi and Ajmer. Who ruled the Delhi and Ajmer? The Chauhans. They were attempt to expand their control of the west to the east, where they were opposed to Chalukya, and they were this Chanakya was of the Gujarat and Gadwada of the west in Uttar Pradesh, and this was known as a Chauhan, ruler of Prithviraj, and this was a ruler of the Prithviraj. Chauhan was a ruler of Prithviraj, and his son, who was defeated an Afghan ruler named Sultan Muhammad Ghori, and Prithviraj Chauhan, who defeated the Afghan ruler named Sultan Muhammad Ghori in 1191, but lost him. They were very next year, and next year he lost, though he went in 1191, but still he lost very soon in 1192. Now the closer look to the Cholas. Now children, these Cholas, you know, they were the Cholas, and they were the form Urvari the Tanjore, and these were the Cholas rise to the power. And a minor chief family known as a Madurai held power in the Kaveri Delta. In the Kaveri Delta there was a name Multaya, and he held the power. They were subordinated to whom? They were subordinated to the Pallavas kingdom of Kanchipuram, and Vijayawala, who belonged to the ancient family, chiefly family of the Cholas, and this Vijayawala was belonged to the Cholas, and from Udaria and captured the delta from the Maturam in the middle of the 9th century. He built the town in Tanjapur and a temple for God. These successes of the Vijayawala conquered neighboring region of the kingdom grew in size, power, and these Vijaya conquered the neighboring region kingdom, and he grew the power, and he has got grew the power of and the Pallavas traditions of the south and the north made part of the kingdom. Now Rajachura, this was the Raja was in kingdoms of Pala, and this thing, his son was ruled as a first Raja. He considered the most powerful Chola ruler. He was the more powerful Chola in the Chola ruler, who was the most powerful Rajan first. The become king in 985 and expanded control over the most of this area. He control over the most of this area. He also recognized the administration of the empire. He also came to know the powerful Cholas emperor, and Rajendra's son was Rajendra. He first contributed policies even raided to the Ganga valley, and this Raja's son Rajendra, he continued to practice the policy of the Raja Rajendra in the Ganga valley, Sri Lanka and countries of southern Asia developing in India and extreme. So now it's a splendid temple and bronze sculpture. Now children, about this temple, I think you see the video in your this thing, and you can find more detail about the Tanjore, about the Chola temple often became the more powerful, and this temple were produced so many things, and these temples were in Tamil Nadu. Then after that went to the maintaining a specialized who worked at the temple and very often lived in these things. These people, these kings used to mostly live near the priest, garland makers, cooks, sweepers, musicians and dancers, etc. In those times they used to live near these people, and these people used to live always near the kings. In these other words, temples were not only places of worship, they were the hub of economic, social and cultural life as well. This temple was not only for the worship, but they were also the hub of economic, social and cultural life as well. Now almost the crafts associated the temple making the bronze image was most distinctive. Chola bronze was the image constructed all amongst the finest in the world. The Chola's bones was the most powerful image was there in that time. So this was they used to devote as well. Now agriculture and the irrigation. Agriculture and irrigation. Now children, wherever you many things, I think in the geography also you saw agriculture and irrigation. This many of the achievement of Cholas were made possible through the new developments in agriculture. New development in agriculture, and these were the river near river Kaveri branches into the several small canals before emptying into the Bay of Bengal, and this canal overflow frequently, depositing fertile soil on their banks. Water from the canal also provide the necessary moisture for agriculture, particularly for the cultivation of rice. These canal was providing necessary moisture for the agriculture, and this private mostly particularly for the cultivating of the rice. And this rice, most of the place they used to grow rice in a year twice. Although agriculture had developed earlier in the other parts of Tamil Nadu, though development of agriculture was developed other parts of the Tamil Nadu, but it was still in there. It was only from 5th and 6th century. It was only found from only 5th and 6th century. That was this area was opened up for the large scale cultivation. Forest had to be clear in the region. The forest used to be cleared out, and some region land has to be level in the other areas, and in the delta region was combined, and the build prevent folding of the canals had been constructed. And then they cleared the region, they cleared the forest, and they level it to the area, and they started to do the agriculture. And then carry water to fields in many areas to crops for grown in a year. In a year, to grow the crops, they had to use the water. They used to carry the water. In many cases, it was necessary to water crops efficiently, artificially. A variety of methods were used for agriculture in same areas well as dug. So these many methods were used for irrigation. In those other places, huge tanks were constructed, wells and dug. So many rain water was collected. Remember, the irrigation work required planning, organizing labor and resource. And if you want to do irrigation work, you have to plan it out beforehand only. The most of the new rulers as well as the people living in the village look an active interest in these activities. In these activities, They took lot of interest. Who took lot of interest? The rulers and the people of the village. Now, the administration of the empire. The administration of the empire, the settlement of Persians known as Ur become a prosperous with the spread of the irrigation. With the irrigation, they used to grow crops, and such villages formed larger unit of called Nadu. That was called Nadu. The village council and the Nadu performed the civil administration functioning, including the dispensing justice and collecting taxes. These people, Nadu was collecting, and Nadu and the administrative function had a several functioning for the administration, and this was collecting the tax. Rich visions of the villa caste extension consider of the face of the Nadu and the supervision of the central Chola government. And these Chola government kings gave some richer to the landlords, titles like the valiant visions serving these three kings, and the Arjunvira as the makers of the respect, and these things was given to the, and the types of land. These types of land is Chola in inscription mentioned the several categories of the land, 7 categories of the land. Whereas Vangani, land for non-Brahman Pigeon properties. This was land was given to the non-Brahmans people, Pigeon, and Brahmaniya Diya, the land gifted to the Brahman, and Sabha Bahulia, land for the maintenance of the school, and Devananda, that a land gifted to the people, temple, and Palestinum land donated to the jail people. And these we were Brahmins often receive land grants to the Brahmacharya as a result to this. And this inscription from the Chennakapula district, Tamil Nadu, provided detail of the way in which the Sabha was organized. And this Tamil Nadu, there was a Sabha was organized. The Sabha had the separate communities, and these Sabha had the different communities. That community has a some inscription of the who can be the member of the Sabha in Tamil Nadu, the Sabha. That was all those who wish to become member of the Sabha should own their land from which land revenue is collected. The land they should all those members who want to be joined to the Sabha, they should have the land, their own land. And secondly, they should have their own homes. And thirdly, they should between 35 to 70 years old, not 18 but 35 to 70 years old. They should have knowledge of the Vedas, and those people who want to join the Sabha, they should know the knowledge of Vedas. They should be well versed administration matter and honor. They should also be good in administration matter and also a sincere. If anyone has been member of communities in these last 3 years, if someone is the member of any other committees, they cannot be the member of this community of the member of Sabha. Anyone who has not submitted his account and those his relatives cannot be the election, cannot be the part of the Sabha. These people who is not submitted their account and their relatives account also, so they cannot be the Sabha's people. In the Sabha, they cannot be the member of the Sabha. So children, now I have completed the chapter of these and come to the end of the chapter. So students, now end this chapter with a blessing of mine. Take care of yourself and study well and work hard. That's all.